Namaste.
Namaste.
Human beings are, generally speaking, I think, boy, is that equivocating, huh? Let me try that again. Most human beings are very uncomfortable with loose ends. Most human beings like their life to be a package that's wrapped the way my grandmother wrapped her garbage. Which was that, now I'm not saying she was anal retentive, but in her trash can would be a paper Kohl's bag. And from one of Kohl's grocery stores. And she put the trash in there. And then she would take it out and she would take another paper Kohl's bag and pull it over the top, which meant that the first Kohl's bag could not be overstuffed or the other one wouldn't go over the top. Then she would get out some string and she would lay it down and tie the string like you would tie ribbon around a package. 4 ways, and then take it out to the trash can. And most of us, I think, would like our life to be as neat and tidy as my Nana's garbage was. But it isn't. And so one of the things religion does is it tries to explain that away. And it might seem strange given the gospel reading that I chose karma as the theme for today. But the story of blind Bartimaeus always reminds me of one of the other blind stories of Scripture. When Jesus and the disciples are confronted with a man born blind, and the disciples ask, who sinned? This man or his parents that he was born blind? Which of course raises at least 2 interesting questions. One of them is karma, because that's what they're asking. What happened that caused this man to be born blind? And the second is, if he was born blind, and there was the possibility that he sinned to cause him to be born blind, they believed in reincarnation. It's quite clear. There's no other explanation.
No, but you don't think it was because they believed in conception from the moment conception?
Conception. Well, it's hard to sin. It's hard to sin in utero, at least until after you're born.
You had some impure thoughts while you were in the uterus.
Yes. Well, that's a stretch for me. That's tying that garbage up maybe twice. You know.
You're right.
And so then, if you, that led me to want to push at karma, because cause and effect in the case of Bartimaeus would also say something must have caused him to be blind, and something must have caused him to come across Jesus so that he could be healed. And Christianity might traditionally say that he had led a very devout and pious life even in his blindness, and that's what caused him to stumble, or no pun intended, stumble across Jesus. I really, that just came out. But really, so I listened to this 2-hour thing about karma this week, kind of wanting to make sure I was reacquainted with the teaching. And there's sort of, for me, I think you can divide karma into 2 kinds of karma. One is confined to this life. If you're a jerk, you won't have many friends. That's pretty clear. If you don't shower except maybe once a month, you won't have many friends. I think that's pretty clear. Or your friends will be other people who don't shower but once a month. If you rob banks, you're probably going to jail. There are things that we do that are selfless and charitable, that at the very least make us feel better. I think that that's an impact of karma. I'm not as hard and fast as the author of this Karma and Rebirth article when he, I mean, it's true, right? doing the right thing for selfish reasons isn't as good as just doing the right thing for selfless reasons. But the Dalai Lama has pointed out regarding compassion, if you don't want to be compassionate for others, be compassionate for yourself. Be compassionate for selfish reasons, because it will still have a positive effect on you. So that there would be disagreement about that particular point. I'd rather see people do a good thing for the wrong reason than do a bad thing for the right reason, if that's even possible. Where I get into big struggles with karma is this idea that it carries over into successive lives. So karma would really say that if you have a child that's 3 years old and it contracts cancer, that it must be the result of negative actions in a previous life. And while the Tibetan master I heard talking about this in the recording I listened to this week said, he admitted, that's not a good thing to lead with. You don't go up to the person or their parents and say, well, obviously, they're just purifying their negative karma from a previous life. But that after the person has a full understanding of the teachings of karma, they may be able, and presumably after they've recovered, they may be able, in this person's opinion, to use that idea of karma to explain why did this happen to me. It strikes me that may be very culturally bound. That in Asian cultures that might be comfort. I don't know how many of us would find that all that comfortable. But it's also very human, because we always ask those why questions. Why did Bob get sick? He's such a nice guy. Phil's kind of a jerk. He had it coming. I can see why that happened. But why did Bob get sick? Because we aren't comfortable with those loose ends. So it seems to me that karma was first a Hindu teaching before it became a Buddhist teaching. And there's technical reasons that for me, I don't really think it should be a Buddhist teaching, but they're really kind of boring. So I think multi-life karma, even for people who believe in reincarnation, may still be a really culturally bound thing. And the short answer to I guess I brought it up, so I should answer it. The quick answer to why it shouldn't be a Buddhist teaching is because Buddhists believe in rebirth, not reincarnation. So all that you're really carrying forth is your essence. But it's not like you're carrying a soul forth, you're carrying really a previous life forth, except for, apparently karma, which to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I would rather say, and you can certainly say whatever you want, because it's you, that sometimes bad things happen to good people and we don't really know why. And that's living with them is one of the difficulties of life. Why was Bartimaeus blind? Maybe he had an accident. Maybe he was frolicking in the backyard and tripped and fell. And instead of getting a boot, he ended up blind. Yes. Yeah, that's right. He shot his eye out with his Red Ryder BB gun. The first noble truth of Buddhism, that life is unsatisfactory, could be paraphrased, shit happens. And it's not very comforting, but it seems to be the truth. Why does your car break down on the way to a certain place? Because cars break down, and we don't really control when it happens, and sometimes it's going to happen at an inconvenient time. Other times not so much. There is an untidiness to life that we really enjoy when it's pleasant surprises. When we get that check in the mail that we weren't expecting, well, we don't mind that untidiness. We go, oh, I deserve that. That's obviously my karma ripening, right? But when we're faced with things that we can't explain that aren't so fun, that's when we have two choices, I think. And I hate to be dualistic about it, but we can come up with complex theories as to why that happened. And maybe we'll be right, who knows? And some of those theories can get pretty convoluted. Even when they're about things like, in the Catholic Church, what are we going to do with the children of parents whose marriage was annulled? And so we find ourselves sometimes in those kind of corners, and we twist and we turn and we try and make it all right. And maybe it would be more honest, although less popular, to say, geez, I don't know. Why do bad things happen? Well, because for one reason, there's germs. For another, our bodies break down. But why it happens to one person and not another, we may not be able to know. And we just have to focus, I believe, instead, not on why did this happen, but what are we going to do about it? You know, Bartimaeus needs to be led to Jesus. That's what needs to happen. And that's more important than how did he get to be blind, how is it that he happened to be around when Jesus was passing by. Bartimaeus needs to be healed on some level. Jesus is the one that can do it. And maybe the whys and the wherefores aren't always the most important thing. Maybe when somebody gets tragically sick, rather than asking a lot of questions about how did this happen, our energy is better focused on how can we help them? How do we get the folks the treatment they need? How do we help them get better? There's actually an old Indian story about this. East Hindu, I believe its origins are, perhaps Buddhist. I think it's Buddhist. I think the Buddha said, if you get shot by a poisoned arrow, the thing to do is not to ask, who shot this arrow? What kind of poison is it? I wonder what the poison will do to me. The thing to do is to pull the arrow out. And later you can worry about that other stuff. I think when we're confronted with those untidy moments and we're uncomfortable, the thing to do is to focus on pulling the arrow out. And later, when the crisis has passed, we can wax philosophical about it all we want, but we probably should hold that kind of loosely because the odds are pretty soon another case is going to come along that blows our theory to pieces. And certainly, rather than saying to somebody in crisis, you know, it's really your fault. we're much better served to say, how can I help?
And I'm also thinking with Bartimaeus, he didn't sit around thinking, why did this happen to me?
No.
He was credited by Jesus by having faith.
Right.
So he turned the karma around.
Amen.
I picked up a bumper sticker I saw once that reads,